Good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the Suffolk County Council Development Regulation Committee. I'm Councillor Jenny Ceresa, Chairman of the committee, and I'll be chairing today's proceedings. This meeting is being broadcast live and will also be available to watch subsequently on the Council's website. Members of the public and press may record or broadcast the meeting when not lawfully excluded, provided they show due respect to others in attendance in accordance with Council guidelines. Please ensure that electronic devices are turned off or set to silent, and speak clearly into the microphones, avoiding any obstructions to maintain sound quality. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of an alarm, please follow the fire exit signs at the rear of the chamber. Evacuation instructions can also be found on page 3 of the agenda. I have a couple of announcements this morning. Since the last meeting, the allocation of committee seats among political groups has been confirmed. As a result, there have been further changes to the committee's membership. I would like to welcome Councillor Bridgeman on the committee, who replaces Councillor Elizabeth Farrow. On behalf of the committee, I extend our sincere thanks to Councillor Elizabeth Farrow for her service from May 2023 to January 2026. I also wish to place on record our thanks to Councillor Joe Mason for his contribution to the committee from May 2025 to January 2026. Thank you. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and substitutions. Rebecca, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillor David Goldsmith, who is substituted by Councillor Alexander Nichol, and I've also received apologies from Councillor Heike Sowa.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest and dispensations. Members, do you have anything to declare? No, I do myself, and it is that my mum's cousin is a volunteer on the railway line. That brings us on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, and that's to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of December 2025. Members, are you happy with the minutes? You move them? They're approved, thank you. That brings us on to agenda item 4, which is the claimed public footpath in Blythburgh on the A12 to FP17 Old Station Yard. This item concerns a formal application to add a claimed public footpath to the definitive map and statement in Blythburgh from the A12 through to the Oxford Station Yard to FP17. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the following officers who are present to assist with any points of clarification. David Last, Definitive Map Officer, Mary George, Senior Definitive Map Officer, and Jonathan Lockington, the Council's lawyer. I will now hand over to David to introduce the report, please.
Thank you. This is a formal application which was made on the 25th of February 2025 for the claimed route, which I'll move on to on the screen. That's the general area, and there's the claimed route which goes from the A12 through the old station yard to link up with footpath 17. The formal application was supplied with 6 user evidence forms, and an additional 8 have been received since the investigation commenced. There's no historical evidence of a public right-of-way. In fact, the only documents to show the route are the ancient railway plans for when the line was proposed in the late 19th century. The line was built but then closed in 1929. Use by the public was brought into question by permissive footpath notices being erected at either end of the route around 2024. So to show dedication has taken place, a 20-year period of use needs to be satisfied by a sufficient number of users from 2004 up to 2024. Of the user evidence that's been supplied, 12 of the 14 satisfy this 20-year period, and the others are supporting evidence. On the basis of it's a user case only with no documentary evidence, the recommendation is to add the route as a public footpath as per the line on map 2, and that's probably about all I can say at the moment, because it's purely user-based. There's not really much else to determine as the documentary evidence doesn't come into this case.
Thank you, David. Members, Do you have any points of clarification? Councillor Beer?
Yes. Did we hear from the local member at all on this?
Prior to the commencement of the investigation, I understand that the local member was supportive of the historic railway line being reintroduced. Since the investigation, he hasn't made any comment to himself during the investigation, even though he was consulted, so no comment from him.
Members, do you have any further points of clarification? No. Move on to the public participation session, and we have received 2 requests to speak on this item. I'd like to invite an objector to the application, Mr. Kenneth Penrose, Chairman of the Halesworth to Southwold Narrow Gauge Railway, to come forward to the public speaking table. Please turn your microphone on, and you have 5 minutes to address the committee when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, members. My name is Ken Penrose, and I'm Chairman of the Halesworth to Southwold Narrow Gauge Railway. I'm going to refer to that from now on as HSNGR. HSNGR is the leaseholder of the land subject of this public rights of way application, and I'm going to refer to that from now on as a PROW. The route of the historic railway at Blythburgh has been in existence since 1879, when the track was laid, and that remained in place until 1941, when the government requisitioned it for use towards the war effort during World War II. The freehold owner of the land, Sir Charles Bloys, has always allowed members of the public to use the path on a permissive basis, and as far as HSNGR is aware, there has never been any problem with this facility provided by Sir Charles. It follows that as the use of this route has never been challenged or threatened in any way by Sir Charles, the application as a PROW seems totally unnecessary. There seems to be no other reason for this application other than to try and thwart HSNGR's plans to restore the railway along its original route. In the nearly 7 years HSNGR has been working at Blythburgh, it has carried out maintenance of the path, including the removal of fallen trees and branches, and by trimming overgrown vegetation. It has carried out this work voluntarily, at no expense to the public, as a benefit to the public, to ensure the path can be used without any obstacles or hindrance that would otherwise spoil the public's enjoyment of it. HSNGR is a public charity, and one of its key charitable aims, as registered with the Charity Commission, is to restore the trackbed along the Southwold Railway. And that railway travelled along that route until 1929, when the railway closed. And also to relay the track, if that is possible to do so. Furthermore, our trustees have a legal duty to do that. The centenary of the closure of the railway is only 34 months away, and it seems a very great shame that if this application is granted, recreating it along this path will be difficult, if not impossible. HSNGR has created a scenic footpath version parallel and close to the part of the proposed PROW. HSNGR encourages the public to use it. Some do and say they enjoy the experience, and some decline to do so. The path enjoys excellent and continuous views of the Blythe Valley, which the path subject of this PROW does not. As HSNGR understands it, following the advice of Burkitt's solicitors, only along a highway should a footpath be 3 metres wide. According to Burkitt, crossfield footpaths should be 1 metre wide, field edge footpaths should be 1.5 metres wide, and bridleways should be 2 metres wide. Why is this footpath 3 metres wide? HSNGR submits that this is excessive. And thank you, and that's the end of my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any points of clarification? Councillor Beer?
Could I just ask you, are you concerned that this, the amount of land, 3 metres, being taken up is what you disagree with? Because you said very early on, I believe, that that you weren't in agreement with what was being asked for.
I couldn't quite hear that, so I'm dropping out of the acoustics here, sorry. Could you just repeat it?
Yes. Are you in a disagreement with the applicant who wants to make the footway 3 metres wide and you think that should be less?
Yes. Well, first question is, yes, we are in agreement, and no, we don't think it should be 3 metres wide.
Members, do you have any further points of clarification? Councillor Stanbury?
Yes, really, it's just picking up on that very point which I was going to ask. So if the proposal was to actually reduce the width of the footpath, would you find that acceptable?
Well, I have to say it's better than 3 metres. It's not acceptable because we don't agree that it should be a public footpath. That's our stance. But if there is to be a footpath, it should be less than 3 metres.
If I could just interject on one point, it is not open to the committee to determine a narrower or wider width based on desire, but purely on the evidence as to what the historic width being used would have been.
Members, do you have any further points of clarification? No. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Mr. Penrose.
Thank you.
I now invite the applicant's representation, Councillor Matthew Saunders, from Blythburgh with Bullcamp and Hinton Parish Council, to come forward to the public speaking table, switch on your microphone and address the committee for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Saunders. I'm speaking on behalf of Blythburgh Parish Council. We made the application that's before you on the advice of our clerk as a result of the Railway Society's installation of signs claiming the path was permissive only, combined with their application for planning permission to relay track and run trains along the path, which would have had the result of severely curtailing or preventing the use of a path which has been in use unhindered since removal of the railway tracks for the war effort, as you heard, in 1941, following the bankruptcy of the railway in 1929. That is why the application is before you, because of the threat to unhindered use of that footpath. That threat has galvanised the village like nothing else in the decade I've lived in Blythburgh. A concerned villager started a petition, quite unheard of in Blythburgh, which was lodged as part of the objection to planning permission. You'll see from the evidence in front of you that there is a record of unhindered use of this path going back to at least 1958, when Roy Stringer explains he walked the path as a child with his grandparents. It is significant that the path provides the only curb-free access to Blythburgh Church from the east of the A12, and that's half of the village on that side of the A12. So it's used by those who are reliant on mobility scooters to access the church. Mobility scooters and railway tracks do not go well together. It is unchallenged that the only barrier over the path was a hinged pole installed with the landowner's permission by us, the parish council, in 1990. It was to prevent cars from accessing illegally moored houseboats that were at the beach, the bend in the river behind the church at the time. In any event, the barrier was left open for many years. It was removed by the Railway Society without our permission being sought, and they seem to have disposed of it, again without our permission. For a short while, there was a bollard installed by the Railway Society, which would have prevented vehicular access to the path. That was removed after problems when the water company was unable to access the main sewer for the village, which lies beneath the footpath, where there was an incident where leaking sewage was at risk of entering the River Blythe. The path does cross a buried railway line that runs for a few metres from a shed. The lines are buried in the concrete of the path. I've never actually seen any railway vehicles run along that path, but in theory they might. Should it be of any relevance, the Railway Society and those few metres of track that they have laid are not registered under the 1993 Railways Act with the Office of Road and Rail, the relevant regulator, and neither has the Society obtained any exemption from licensing, unlike many other heritage railways. So at least as far as that act is concerned, this doesn't appear legally to be a railway, at least for the moment. I should probably make clear that I'm a solicitor, but I have nothing to add to your officer's explanation of the relevant law, in particular the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. As he has explained in the papers before you, it all comes down to the evidence of unhindered use of this footpath. And there is ample evidence before you that there has been unhindered use, not just for 20 years, but at least back to 1958. And I hope with the explanations that I've given you, you understand the reasons why the Parish Council took the steps that it did to preserve unhindered use of this footpath, which you'll see from the evidence in front of you is a very important utility for the residents of the village. Crucially, the evidence as to unhindered use is unchallenged. Nothing you heard from the Railway Society representative represents a challenge to the evidence of unhindered use. So I should just finish by thanking your officer and his team for the time and trouble that they've taken engaging with us as the applicant, in particular, the trouble they took to speak to a number of residents in the village. That was very much appreciated, I know. So on behalf of the Parish Council, our thanks to the officer and to his team. Thank you.
Members, do you have any points of clarification for Councillor Saunders? Councillor Beer?
Yes, could you just clarify, are you saying that there's a threat from the Railway Society that they may lay tracks along that part? And is that what would cause the people to have problems with moving vehicles?
Yes, sir. An application was made by the Railway Society for planning permission from East Suffolk District Council, the Planning Authority, and what they sought was to lay narrow gauge railway track the length of the path. And so a railway track laid on sleepers for the length of the path as far as the public footpath that descends the slight hill beside the church, that would inevitably have hindered use of the footpath, because there would be railway tracks on sleepers where people otherwise would be placing their feet. So yes, we also objected on the basis that the main sewer line runs beneath that path. It was laid in the 1970s, and access to that sewer pipe is also a relevant consideration. That's not an issue for you, I understand. That's for the planning authority. The planning application was rejected, amongst other reasons being given, the fact that there was a pending application for the footpath to be registered as a public footpath. So yes, there was a very real threat to the continued use of the path, and that is what galvanised the villagers, the residents of Blytheborough, and also the Parish Council to make this application.
Yes, just to add that the reason for the application is separate from what you have to consider before you today. So irrespective of why the application was put in, you simply have to consider the evidence put before you today.
Members, do you have any further points of clarification? No. Thank you very much, Councillor Saunders, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Before we go into debate, I'd like to invite the case officer, David, to respond to any issues raised, and if any members have any points of clarification for you also.
I don't think there's really anything I need to mention. The Railway Society gentleman, he did mention that they've provided an alternative route parallel to the route. That's something that I've seen it is there. It does look a pleasant route, but we can't really take that into consideration because the evidence can only apply to where the use has been. So the 20 years used by the sufficient number of users refers to where they've actually walked. That can't be transferred onto an alternative route. Anything desire to move the public footpath onto that would have to be a separate piece of work via the district councils to propose for a diversion of the route if it was confirmed. As I say, the evidence has to be based on where the evidence lies, where the people have used the route, even if there is something else that's desirable, which can't be considered at this stage.
Councillor Drummond.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question, David, is really about public rights of way and their accessibility, because we heard that mobility scooters would use this route. I don't believe that public rights of way fall under the Equality Act, so they don't have to be wheelchair friendly or mobility scooter friendly. Is that correct?
Just to, if we can avoid muddling the considerations for what we have to consider today, which is the evidence of use before the committee. Some public rights of way will be accessible, others won't, but that is irrelevant to this particular consideration today.
I think all I can add to that is obviously the formal application's been made for the route as people have used it in the last 20 years, which hasn't been walking on railway lines or sleepers. It's been walking down a natural surface track is what the use they've claimed. So that's the evidence we've got in front of us.
Councillor Kemp.
Well, according to who you believe, this present situation is a permissive use. I think I know the answer to my question, but could you tell us what the status of a permissive footpath is, please?
Right, okay, yes, notices were displayed as what established the date of the bringing into question in 2024. Notices were displayed advertising it as a permissive path. The landowners, as we've heard, may well have considered it a permissive path for whatever time before that, but if this wasn't advertised to the users and to the local public, they were using it, believing it to be as of right, and it wasn't until 2024 when notices were put up saying it was that it was permissive rather than public, that the right gets brought into question. So a permissive path is, as it states, it's permissive and they're allowing people to use it, and that permission can be withdrawn at any time. And that's one of the reasons why people feel that they had a right to use it, and that has brought it into question and they don't want to lose it. So that's hence why a formal application was made to record what they believed up until that point of this signage going up was a public footpath.
Members, do you have any further points of clarification? No, I'll now open the debate. Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I've read the report, I've listened to the evidence that we've heard today. I think the important thing is, as our legal officer has pointed out to us, on all planning applications, you have to confine your deliberations discussion to material planning considerations. And in terms of a footpath, we're not here, as we've been told, to discuss how the application came about. It's not relevant to the consideration how inconvenient or otherwise that would be to the landowner or the practicalities of implementing it as a footpath. We're also not here to consider whether all users, including those with various disabilities, would be able to use the footpath. None of those things are relevant considerations. We have to confine ourselves to consideration of, has one of the tests that we have to apply been satisfied to determine that a public footpath should be included on the definitive map. It comes down to paragraph 36 in the officer's report saying that there is user evidence to support the dedication of the footpath under section 31 of the Act. That's all it comes down to. All other things are not relevant considerations. So on the basis of that paragraph, the evidence is clear. I believe it says 12 in previous paragraph 34(12) of the 14 user evidences fulfil the requirements. So to me, clear and simple, and I'll propose that we accept the officer recommendation as per paragraph 3. Thank you.
So I take that as a proposal for acceptance, Councillor Bird. Councillor Stringer, will you second that?
Yes, I'm happy to second that. By the way, I just want to point out Roy Stringer evidence, no relation as far as I'm aware. Relatively common name in Suffolk, I have to say. Look at its history, it's interesting. Representing a division that also has a small volunteer-run railway running through it, it can create challenges, but when these challenges can be overcome, it can be to the benefit of all. But today we're not tasked with speculating on what may or may not come forward in the future or be possible in the future. What we've got to look at is the actual evidence in front of us. And I think the length of the officer's presentation today demonstrates how clear-cut this one particularly is. The evidence of usage is overwhelming and substantial, and I think paragraph 3 has been easily hit the bar of. I can't, if we were going to reject this, what evidence would we have that it's supposed to reject? Are we saying all of those witnesses were wrong and they didn't think they were using that as of right? I think not. I think that the evidence of usage for decades, by the look of it, is overwhelming. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any further members that would like to enter debate? Councillor Beer?
Well, just to say that my colleague on my right and Councillor Stringer, they're quite right, and this is the way forward we have to go. But it is disappointing that perhaps the two parties concerned can't get together and see if they can find some room for manoeuvre. We can't go against the evidence, and so I shall be supporting the proposal. But it is disappointing that they can't get together and try and solve this, and see if there's a way forward, because I think both organisations have something to offer. Thank you.
Are there any further members? No. So we have a proposal from Councillor Bird, seconded by Councillor Stringer, and that is the officer recommendation. It is recommended that the formal application is accepted with a modification order being made under section 53(3)(b) of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 to record a public footpath from the A12 through the old station yard car park along the former railway track to FP17, incorporating the particulars in paragraph 37 into the definitive statement. All those in favour? That's 10 against. Abstain? 1. Oh, sorry, 9 in favour. Yeah, 9 in favour and 1 abstention. So that's officer's recommendation is approved. That concludes today's Development and Regulation Committee. Thank you everyone for all your attendance and contributions today. Before you go, the next meeting of the Development and Regulation Committee is scheduled to be held at 10 a.m. on Tuesday the 17th of March. The next site inspection reserve date for the planning matters is scheduled for the morning of Friday the 13th of March. This meeting is now closed.